Aloha, my name is Anna Covert, and I'm coming to you from my battleship here on the beautiful island of Oahu. This week on the Covert Code, the topic is empowering the next generation of business leaders through innovation. And my special guest is Joseph R. Hudicka, Forbes author of the best-selling title, The AI Ecosystem Revolution, public keynote speaker, philanthropist, teacher, and innovator. A man of many talents, some of Joe's notable business achievements include the founding of the Fizzee Foundation and being co-founder of the Clarity team. He's here today to share his new book and B2B growth strategies that anyone can implement, as well as how we can, as a community, empower the next generation of business leaders to unlock their true creative potential through innovation. Thanks so much for being here today.
Oh, I'm amped to be here. Thank you, Anna.
So to get us started, you're so interesting. I don't even know where to begin with where to talk about. But why don't you, in your own words, just tell us a little bit about your own professional journey and how you got got to where you are right now.
Absolutely. So, first of all, I've been a lifelong entrepreneur, but that becomes a bit of something you discover over time, right? So, I guess the pinnacle point for me was halfway through college. This really difficult moment happened where my dad, who had worked for a company for 40 years, all of a sudden went to work one day and there were chains on the doors. There was no work left. It was a family-owned, operated business for decades, and the family decided they're not in this business anymore. So in that moment, fortunately, the entrepreneurial genes kicked in down at college. Now, I still had 2 more years to go, and I had to figure out how the hell we were going to get this college thing done if there wasn't any money to pay for it, right?
Right.
Uh, but I was able to schedule a meeting with the dean of the business school. And it was a great conversation because I walked in with my curriculum. Yep, here's the things you're teaching me. And I walked in with photocopies of magazine covers from the school library. Going into information technology a few decades ago, there was a whole lot of new things that were coming to the market. And so I showed him the difference between these great new relational databases and awesome technologies the world was looking for then and the 40, 50-year-old outdated computer programming languages they were teaching me. And I said, look, I came here to learn how to turn on computers, make pretty lights flash, and design world-changing software that transforms your world and mine for the better. How are we going to close this technology gap between what the world's looking for and what we're teaching so that I can make that impact for and with my university? And literally that moment, that transformative moment with what happened to my family, as difficult as it was, turned into the spark to create an entirely different future without a roadmap to follow.
Wow. And how did he respond?
He immediately introduced me to another member of the faculty, which was fairly new, who told me, get out of here. You're not good enough. This is too complicated. I don't know how to do what you even want to do. And then, as fate would have it, a brand new box of software showed up on campus, which became the subject of my first book years ago with Osborne McGraw-Hill Oracle Press, this little thing called Oracle, which was about to become a big deal in the world. I took the goddamn box. I took it right back to the dorm room. I got the computer, used computer from a professor, and I said, all I need is one thing. Find me local businesses that want to figure out how to build relational databases for some business purpose. I'll do the rest. And that's how I did it. I got a professor to write smart mathematical algorithms. I'm not that guy. And make an introduction to a business owner because I didn't know those people yet. But I had the passion to figure out how to solve business problems with technology.
Wow.
And the new technology showed up. My passion was right there with it. And the rest is history.
You manifested it.
Indeed, yes. And I think, thank God I had that gene because I don't know what it would have been like if I just looked at the box of software as opposed to picked it up and said, let's see what we can do with it.
Wow, that is amazing. Oracle, gosh. Wow. And so tell us about like the Fizzee Labs Foundation. It sounds like a passion project for you and working with students. Tell us about what that's involved with.
It began with our children. Our children were highly creative, as all children are. We're all born that way. But when they were really little, we had what we called these family productive play sessions together. We take their ideas and we turn them into playtime together. Well, fast track after a few years, and our son becomes Apple's youngest app entrepreneur
Wow.
when he's 7 years old. And our daughter, who's 5 years younger than him, watches it and says, I'd like to design my own clothes for my 18-inch American Girl dolls. I don't want just the stuff that shows up in the store. And then this magic moment happened. They were 12 and 7. They were in the same school together. And mom and I happened to be lucky enough to pick them up together that day. And we see them in the field having this really intense conversation as we're in the car line. And when they finally get to the car, they get in and we're like, hey guys, how was your day? And Joey summarized for us. Joey's our oldest. He's 12 at the time. He says, you know, there's got to be a way to help all kids know how much power there is in their creativity and what they can do with it like we get to do. Because when we talk about our businesses, they don't get it. And literally from that moment, our kids took their innovation, creativity, and entrepreneurship and turned their attention to creating learning resources to infuse creativity, innovation, entrepreneurship into STEM education to show kids their ideas have value and an impact to make not only for the world, but for them too.
Wow, that is so cool. My daughter is 10. She's going to be 11 in June. And she just loves, being the techie person. I'm trying to get her into more STEM and, with the robots. And I just wish they had had that when we were kids, at least when I was a kid. It's such an exciting time to be a child, with all the awareness and how we're really just stepping into our role as, part of a greater species, I think.
Indeed, and this the ability to learn on your own, carve out your own self-guided trails is really where some of the exciting potential is. If we apply the latest technologies like AI for good, we can find amazing ways to leverage it as accelerators in our in our learning pathways.
Indeed. So before we talk about AI and what you got going on, tell us about the Clarity team and what's involved there.
Sure. So Clarity Team is our management consulting services business. My wife and I have been partners in everything in our lives forever and ever and ever, including our businesses. Clarity Team is that core business of ours. Um, think of it as rather than a scale consultancy. Think of it more like special ops.
Mm.
um, we don't really get out there and actually Covert Code, the name's got the vibes kind of fit together. I noticed that right away, Anna. Yeah, the idea is we tend to work with very, very strategic leadership in organizations at the enterprise scale that have typically tried 2 or 3 or 5 times or more to accomplish something really transformative and disruptive and just haven't figured out how to get the right squad together to make that happen. And then they find their way to being introduced to us.
Wow.
Uh, so that's who we are. We never try to be the biggest, baddest, company out there. We just try to put together the best team that beats theirs.
Awesome. I love that. So you talk a lot about design doing and going beyond design thinking. Tell us how that really evolves in a world of global supply and transportation logic and education.
Sure. So design thinking is a major topic that I'm lucky enough to teach both undergrad and graduate level at the university as well. Um, but activating, that's my superpower. I don't know if you've ever heard of Strengths Finder, but it was a wonderful day for my team when we found that forever ago and we learned why I create the problems I create. I'm ready, go, set. I'm an activator. So when I hear or see something, I can very quickly make a gut call on where we need to go, and I'm gone. Now, everybody else around me needs to figure out where the hell are we going? Why are we going? How do we support this? Right? Activator. I've learned to leverage my activating superpower in how I teach design thinking. And the reason I did is because I began to notice a lot of folks are naturally good at and comfortable with the thinking. Not as many are really great and comfortable with the idea of trying the ideas.
Right.
So the design doing, the wrinkle there is get out of the thought cycles and play. Get a first step, a second step, a third step, and there's going to be much more powerful learning that comes from doing
Yes.
than just the thinking part. And that's where that comes
That must be an activator too. I'm a doer. I like that's why I started having an advertising agency, and now I have multiple companies because and people are like, "God, you have so many." I'm like, it's like collecting. But when you own an advertising agency, it's so easy. You just think of an idea and you have a website and a logo, and there you go. It's already conceptualized. So I think that you're right. It's in failure that we learn really how to achieve and become greater.
Indeed. I love that word. And I had to learn to get conscious of how challenging that word can be for a lot of other people. Like
Yes.
I've literally always said, fail faster. Like this
Yeah.
should be one of my mantras. Fail faster, whatever it is. Hell, I'm left-handed. You know how bad my writing is and will continue to be? You know how many times they made me try and get better at it? Look, there's some things the air kind of get better at. Well, for me, that showed me to turn my eyes to technology early in my career. So I was on a rocket ship of technology early, mostly because I had the presence of mind of what I was never going to get great at versus what I could get even better at and separate those things.
I had the same problem. I'm dyslexic. And when I grew up, I couldn't read my own handwriting. I worked really, really hard, but I just didn't learn the same way. And as a result, I cried a lot and it wasn't fair. And it wasn't until much later in my life, thanks to the unwavering support of my mother. And as you have guessed it, the computer, where it equaled the playing field. Finally, I had spell check and Excel. I could read my own handwriting. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about fairness and how because technology really was a bridge for me and watching how it's been, you know, mutilated almost and how it's now being used as an anti-helper, or to really, or separate us more as a society is one of the passions that I have for, what I do and making sure that it's transparent and fair.
So grateful that you shared that. If I may, my wife taught herself how to read through a Wonder Woman comic book because dyslexia was not something that the community was thinking about it where she had lived and diagnosing and supporting and treating. So I know firsthand from somebody very meaningful in my life that what that journey sounds and looks like. And I applaud you for reaching the amazing heights that you continue to soar at.
Thank you. Yes, and and that's really, I think, one of the what will bring me to my next question for you is, about this AI ecosystem and the revolution. Tell me, because I think that a lot of people that I talk to, there's this almost equal fear and excitement, right, with AI, like the unknown, right, and then the known of, oh no, like you know, it could take jobs away, which I don't really necessarily agree with. But some of the things we hear can take jobs away. It can steal our data. It can impersonate us. It's going to become, the Matrix, and we're, what's going to happen. And then another side of it that there's all these medical benefits and just efficiencies and the ability to connect with different parts of ourselves through technology. And so tell me, what is your book? What's your foundation of your book, and what are your feelings on where we're going?
There's a lot to unpack there. We'll start with the foundation of the book, because I discovered something really early on in the pandemic, and I've referred to it within the book as what I call a silent shift. So silent shifts are these big, massive changes that happen in industries, but they appear small or even meaningless at first, until by the time their transformations take place, it's completely taken and transformed an entire industry like a glacier does the land. We just don't see it as it's happening, just like a glacier, right? So I noticed early in the pandemic something pretty massive and quiet. What I noticed was, remember, I'm an enterprise software guy. This is what I've been doing for years, making this software. Well, it didn't take me long to realize we were making software that sucks all these years, right? We've been making people help software.
Right.
And rather than what we really, I believe, have always meant to do, create software which helps people. So, how I noticed this, I created a fun little exercise. I started asking people, okay, do me a favor. tomorrow, start your day, your favorite beverage, your workspace. It usually includes a computer, right? Most people would say yes, it's okay. Have yourself a seat, have your favorite beverage, and look at your computer and call me when it does something for you. And there would be this crazy, right? This aha moment of, oh, what do you mean? Well, like, what do you mean? But the thing is, we've been making people extensions of computer systems for decades. We're just the keyboard. We're just the mouse. It only does things if we are physically attached to it. And so it's very reactive architecture. And when the world changed at the beginning of the pandemic, we couldn't necessarily get any of our business done anymore through the technologies we had built all those years. We were seeing one silent shift, and I believe it became the moment for me to start bringing this new one. And the concept I realized was not going to be about any particular technology. It was going to be about what we're experiencing in the potential of AI. Fundamentally, for AI of any kind to be successful, it needs to be taught. It needs to be trained, just like us. But the thing is, it needs the right level of data to teach it. And you know what we do in business, particularly in the world of supply chain? We play a lot of games with each other. Kind of looks like poker. I'm not a poker player, but I understand the concept. I got my cards, you got your cards. I might show you one or two, but I'm not letting you know all the details that I know about my future, my volume, my demand, my supply, etc. Because maybe if I hold back just a little, I might get a better price. I may get faster time. And so we've used these game poker-like tactics against each other as opposed to figuring out how to share better and more responsibly with each other. And so the premise for the book, AI Ecosystems, is preceding the technology itself before we get to a place where we can really learn how to meaningfully leverage AI in a way that helps people rather than harm them. We need to solve bigger problems that we've created in terms of the walls that we put up around our data and our information and how we decide to share or not share. That's the spirit of the book, beginning to end. It's helping us get our consciousness raised to a different thought level of the meaning and value and power of the data we have, and that there are new ways to be able to responsibly share bits of that information with each other so that as individuals, as teams, and as companies, and as ecosystems, we can improve our operations for everyone's good, not just for mine or yours, but ours.
Wow, I really love that, because I think it's true that we're in a data world, we're in a data age, but data is all around us and it belongs to everyone. That's why we have, discerning politics and principles where people can disagree, right? The Information Freedom of Information Act, for instance, right? This data should be accessible to us all, as long as it's free of personal identifiers, right? But really, the trend of that data and where we are evolving should be accessible. And it brings me to one of my big concerns, which what we're seeing in digital advertising, it's with the growth of fraud, right? And then and then that businesses don't even realize that the data that they're collecting and storing like hamsters, they do not want to get rid of it. They're like, this is my data. Like, that's mine. You can't have any. But really, in fact, a lot of that data is fake data. And now that's polluting your system. And if you don't share it to realize, oh, wait, guess what? This guy and this guy and this guy all have that same information in their systems because guess what? It's a bot. And then if we were working together, we could exclude it and protect ourselves at even deeper level. I think that's really transformative.
You're absolutely right, and the thing that's scary about it is, or that makes it scary for folks, is because you'll have technology experts that understand bits and bytes of data. You'll have business experts that understand business processes and operations, right? But what you need is a collective understanding in the middle to be able to get to a place where, huh, what would be really valuable to my partner who supplies me with transportation services, for example, might be something where they can see the seasonality of the demand that I have by mode of transport and the locations I need them. I don't need to show them every single transaction. I don't need to show them the vendors I hired in each one of those. But if they saw the seasonal curves, they might be able to think to look at their network and say, geez, I could redeploy my transportation assets in a way that can better accommodate the needs of my customer. And then I might do more business with that customer, and that customer might be able to get a benefit out of it as well. So the sharing does not even necessarily mean every granular detail of it. It could be aggregation, summary strategies, but we don't have those conversations. Instead, we make these cybersecurity strategies and policies that basically have people come to when you come in and ask to share data, you just get an answer no. Why? Because the policy says we can't. Why? Well, I don't know. The policy says we can't, so we can't. We don't even have the conversations, and that's the real problem behind all this.
So, and I agree. And what do you think? So, in terms of the GDRP, as a for instance, and they have one of the most sophisticated privacy protection rules in place. And here in America, we only have the California Consumer Protection Act, and there's some other states that are kind of trying to implement some of these universal consent and really data policies to make sure that there's data mapping and transparency in terms of where data is being shared. Is that preventing this kind of future from occurring? And we don't mean we're all looking to them as a leader, but is what they're doing actually maybe going to backfire and prevent us from achieving what you're talking about?
That's a great question. And my simple answer is no. In the world of technology, we have the luxury of creating architecture, right? And that architecture could deploy new techniques that we haven't used before. Modern architecture didn't always exist. Sometimes we get to see a brand new cool building. You're like, wow, how did that happen? Right? It didn't follow any of the rules that we're used to, yet it did. Right? They were just new wrinkles that they were able to apply using the basic principles of architecture we've understood for millennia. Well, same thing here. Okay, we understand there's certain information that has to be cordoned off and it has to be isolated, and two companies can't be co-located. Fine, right? There are patterns of some of the other data that could be really important and meaningful. We could make the connections at the pattern level, aggregate at summarize level, and start sharing at that level of content.
Like sacred
And
geometry, kind of.
yeah, yeah, right?
Yeah.
So it's a matter of bringing new principles. In the book, I call them permissioned data sets in the AI ecosystem's flow. What you see today is you've got organizations that are training their models on public data sets, and they're not getting the value they need. Why? Well, guess what? The data that their business really needs is not owned by the public.
Right.
And then you got other companies that are training on private data sets. Guess what? Not getting the value they need because they don't own the data that's necessary. It's owned by their ecosystem. So inevitably, the conversation that I'm inviting with the book and the supporting keynote experiences is really about getting people there, getting us all to the point of realizing we have access to so much more knowledge that could be equal to more than the sum of its parts if we find and establish the right way to responsibly share together.
Do you think that the medical community is maybe a little bit closer to this? It just seems like, the ability to kind of, share like, cancer research and some of these other different, what industries is there anyone leading the charge here that we can look to as a pillar of, okay, they're doing it in some fraction and we can maybe take that learning and apply it to other industries?
That's a great question. I tell you, my mentor from college is still actively involved in research, applying AI in cancer research, as you just described, as a matter of fact. So it's a topic that I'm personally connected to and really grateful to see happening. So the medical profession is closer in two aspects: heavily regulated, right? Heavily regulated and scrutinized, And the value of the volume of data as a predictor is really, really um, it's holding very high potential on the other side of it, right? So it's closer in that sense, but you still have the same underlying problem. If you can't get if you can't get the individuals to agree to share their data, and then you can't get the organizations to agree to share the data, right? So there's so many more levels in between. Wow, I just turn on this algorithm on this data silo and whoo, there's an amazing insight. There's still so many gaps there. And the difficulty is if we fill the pool a quarter of the way, we're going to get a different prediction than if we filled it halfway, and if we filled it three-quarter and we filled it all the way, right? So we need to intensify our acceptance and embracing of sharing, right, in all of these areas, because the only way AI gets better is by continuing to let it learn. It doesn't have a sense of consciousness. I don't anticipate that happening anytime soon, though it's fun for media entertainment and all. Um, but just to simply learn, it can only learn from history. And so we got to give it enough and continue to give it more history in order for the learning to continue to have value.
Indeed. I know a lot of people are talking about or comparing the space race to what kind of we're in now in terms of this global AI race. What are your thoughts on that? What are we racing toward?
So
Not the moon. So what is it really for
I've got a different analogy, which I love that you brought that up, because the space race was a race to get to somewhere out there, which in theory allowed us to say, okay, now we got here, we can go somewhere else. The way I see the AI race playing out is more like a race to the bottom. So the way I see companies really going at it by and large, and this isn't everybody, this is just reading the vibrations collectively, right? Most organizations are taking those scarcity mindset approaches of what positions can we eliminate? Like what work do we do today that we can do with less people? And so take a simple negotiation process for a moment. Let's say you want to buy something and I want to sell something, right? You don't want to be annoyed with the whole buying process. So you make yourself a little bot or an agent, what we call it now. Wait, yeah. You got to keep repurposing the term every time, the newness wears off and lack of
Sure.
right? Okay. So so you make a bot and it's going to negotiate for what it wants to purchase. And I make a bot and it's going to negotiate on where I want to sell it at, right? So you've got an absolute ceiling you're willing to pay. I've got an absolute floor I'm willing to accept. And so what's going to happen? Your bot and my bot are going to cycle themselves all the way to the bottom. And then they're going to look at the two of us digitally and be like, I don't know, we're stuck. And now what? We got two humans getting into a really frustrated conversation with each other, right? Because I created this technology to help me, didn't I? Why am I stuck in this moment? And the answer is because we were lazy. We're trying to apply technology in an absolute wrong way. That's where the problem is. I don't think we're applying it in that outward look as much as we should be and can be. There are industries, we're talking about what's going on in medicine, right? That is absolutely future forward focused. But most commercial applications that you see and hear about come out to be more like surveillance pricing, for example, where my formerly preferred air carrier jacked me for $12,000 for one flight to Europe because of supply and demand, right? I needed to get there. I demanded to get there in a short time frame. Supply was limited and I ignorantly bought. Till a few months later, I went back to buy again with a few months lead time and I got the same ridiculous price. So I researched their partner and I found that the partner was able to sell me the same seat on the same plane that my carrier owned, by the way. It wasn't owned by the partner, for the original price, 25%, right? No 300% markup. What's going on there? that is a bot technique that's learning from, or an AI technique that's learning from my spending habits, right? And
Right.
my shopping habits. And it jacked me up, plain and simple.
Wow. That
Only once. But I admit it, it happened. And I want to share those examples with people because it's real and it's not just happening to me.
wow. And so how do we prevent that? I mean, is clearing your cache enough?
Well, that's a great question. I see lots of people trying to do that. No, I don't think it's enough. I've been playing with this. I have customers and friends all around the world. We'll get together. We'll be sitting in Milan, and we'll have his local browser teed up with my browser that comes from the New York metro area, and we'll see getting entirely different prices based on the geography we're from. Then I'll try to change my VPN credentials, right? And I'll try to go stealth. Nope, because as your book points out, as a matter of fact, there is there are wealths of data out there, even about the devices and about the people's identities.
Yep.
And somewhere behind all that, there's a bunch of bot crawlers that are trying to say, "Oh wait, this is really Joe. This is really Joe."
Yeah, we fingerprint ID mapped him. We know it's him. You know,
Yes, you were dead on when I was
98% accuracy, we're sure. Yeah.
you were dead on. When I read that, I was giggling to myself. I'm like, this is so true. This is what's going on. So for me, what I did was I just became carrier agnostic. I got done with the fight, and instead, I fly with who's going to give me the best deal for where I'm at right now. I changed my entire relationship with the industry because the industry, or at least the players that I was primarily doing business with, chose to not have a real meaningful relationship with me anymore.
I mean, that is this next level, this deception. I mean, it really, I mean, it reminds me of what a lot of people don't realize. Oh, it's Amazon Day. I'm like, oh, good. Guess what? You're paying the same rate as normal. They mark it all up. Like the whole website goes up. Everything goes online up 20%, 30%, whatever you're getting this discount for. So, congratulations. You've just bought something for full price, but you feel good about it. So, good for you, But it's that kind of thing that's like, you don't realize because you're right. It's a scarcity. It's a, oh my God. It's like when they start counting down. Was there really one seat left? Probably not. That's like the Timu, what Timu just is amazing at, making you think that you have to buy it right now. And how badly do you really need to squeeze this little bottle here? And you're like, there's only two left and I have to have it, But
Well,
yeah.
I'll tell you, there's a real fascinating silent shift going on in the world of global supply, thanks to Timu and Shein, that I don't think a lot of people are noticing yet. But since I geek out in that world a little bit too, I can't help but noticing. So there's been three major silent shifts in the world of supply chain. The last one is a return to simplicity of supply chain design. What those fast fashion companies are doing, and whether you like fast fashion or not, just put that aside for a moment. What they've done is they've completely rethought supply chain design, and they've eliminated this idea of building all of your own physical infrastructure in the middle, your distribution centers, your transportation assets, thousands of vehicles that you own, all the drivers, and instead they're outsourcing it to the network, and they're putting cheap things to individual consumers on a plane from one side of the world to the other. So there's silent shifts going on everywhere. And which ones win or lose in the long term, it's not always easy to know at the front, but pay attention because if you see them early, right, you can definitely avert some disasters in your own business experience as well.
Yeah, it makes me think, I'm a big fan of print on demand because I have a lot of clients. And, even for myself, I put up a Printify store on my website so that I could order my own swag materials just for myself, right? For my book and when I go places. But that concept of, just you can design whatever you want. And when people buy it, it's made. And it makes me feel that, that needs to really take effect in larger commerce. And what I mean by that is like Macy's. If you ever go to the shopping mall and you walk, it is like, zombie apocalypse. There's no one shopping. And there's this rack after rack of items. And the only thing where people go is, Nordstrom's rack or these discount stores where they're buying those same things at a discount. And it makes me feel that it's just not sustainable. And then really the supply chain in should shift to match what we're seeing with print on demand, where Macy's and these other places have kind of like a smaller retail store with one item of each. and you're kind of back to the way we used to shop, or you're making an appointment and you're coming in and you're trying that one item on. And if it fits, you're ordering it from the drop ship and they're cutting and sewing it on demand.
And you have an experience again.
Right.
Right. Yes. I absolutely agree. I look at those big barns and I look at all the wasted space and the fact that it used to be maybe 60% of the space was warehouse in the back of it. And you've seen the space become more and more retail as you've seen less and less people to service the retail in them. And it feels kind of creepy walking into a lot of those stores. It doesn't feel like it used to, where there's people there really wanting you to have a great time. I think there's a transformation that we all want because we're human. We're social beings. We want to have the experience to go in and frankly, not only find that thing, but maybe somebody else sees me finding that thing. And maybe we have a conversation about it, right?
Right.
So that social element absolutely is just part of us. But the business models of those anchor stores are broken for the way that the world has evolved. And whether it becomes smaller spaces or bigger, I think that depends on how creative the players get on what else they can put in those spaces. But we can go in, we can experience, explore, and yes, the stuff can be delivered to our house. We don't even have to carry it with us, right?
Indeed. I want to shift focus a little bit. I want you to let's talk about, how what we can all do to empower our future generation to really, break out of the box and in terms of innovation and just change.
Well, that's a really interesting question. You know, look what I point to what we did with our kids. We didn't know what productive play was when we started it, right? But what we felt was they've got some creative ideas they can come up with all on their own. Let's take the time to hear them. Let's ask about them. Let's see if we could turn those into little playtime exercises together, right? And and while that was great in the structure that we put it together, in for kids, it's exactly the way they live today. And all the people that we've been able to impact with the educational partnerships we've established with NASA through Fizzee Labs over the years, and the Henry Ford Museum of American Innovation, um, we've just taught people to play with their creativity. There was an amazing study done 50 years ago where NASA did a longitudinal analysis to create a study that can help them pre-identify the most creative engineer candidates out there. Creative engineer doesn't really go together in the way that we teach, right? You lose the crayons when we're like 2 in school and like that's it, right? But what they found was while the 5-year-old harnessed 98% of their creativity, by the time they got to 17 years old, they only had about 11% access. And by the time they were 31 years old, they were down to 2. So what we found and what I'd like to share with everyone is that creativity is really a muscle in and of itself. We all have it. We're all born with it. When my son created the game for Apple forever ago, he didn't know game theory. He didn't have a PhD in any of that stuff, but he had ideas about games that he played and that he wanted to imagine a new experience. And so he played with it and it became this new thing because he allowed himself to play and strengthen his creativity muscles. And that's what all of us can be doing every single day. We can all look around us and see an opportunity to make something better, make something different, solve a problem, create an opportunity. We don't do that as much as we probably should. And therefore, our creativity muscle tends to get weak. But I mean, the good news is it's always there for us, no matter what stage of life we're at. And I think it just comes down to playing.
I think that I really love what you said there. It makes me think I'm a big meditator. I love Dr. Joe Dispenza, and I'm not sure if you know who he is or not, but talk about the meditation and just that most of us by the time we're 30, most of our lives we're in the past. We're living in the known, right, of what we've experienced or we think we've experienced, right? And really, it's not until we go into the unknown or this idea of imagination where there's new potential or new opportunities. and it's scary for people. But why is it scary, right? It's because, to your point, by the time you're, you keep losing it. You're losing the creative juice. You're losing the desire to really look forward to this unknown. And I think that, it's just gonna be interesting on how, as we as business leaders, can try to incorporate that into our everyday, workspaces.
Well, I'll tell you, the approach to AI in a lot of places is creating what I refer to as a conformity crush. What's taking place is we're going in and we're targeting AI at certain activities that people are doing now, right? Or could be doing. And when we do this, what happens is we will naturally reshape the job landscape in some way, shape, or form. But look at it within one organization. The people who survive whatever that transformation is, how creative do you think they want to be? How many new ideas do you think they want to share? They want to just be thankful and lucky that they survived whatever that wave of, transformation was. So, you know, when we're not embracing our teams and saying AI is just another tool, it's a tool for you. Help us figure out how it can help you create more value, better life experience. Until we start taking that kind of approach, we're going to end up creating more and more tension and less creativity in the workplace. I'm sad to say.
Yeah, no, I think that you're 100% right. And I think one of the big things, or what was your recommendation for, I guess, business owners out there who, they're just so stressed, I'll say, about how fast AI is moving and making the wrong decision. Like, which AI do they invest in? And what is your recommendation on how to steer them in a path where they can baby step in a safe way?
It's funny, just because AI, the current editions of AI exist, doesn't mean that every single company needs to have that right now, or it's the end of their world, right? But I think the news cycles maybe create some of that artificial pressure. For me, it's always, what are you trying to do? We
Right.
start with the basics, design thinking. What is it that you're trying to do, right? The tools within the world of AI are the tools within the world of AI. They can only help if you best position them to be helpful. So you got to understand what the impact is you're trying to make first, and understand all the tools in your team's toolbox, not just the new shiny thing that you're, scared or excited or whatever about. Um, just stay focused to the true company vision and mission. And as long as you do that and really empower your team to collectively support the decision making around artificial intelligence, it'll find its right path in the organization. Don't force it.
Yeah, I think you're right. Another thing I like to tell clients is, let's make a list of the things that no one wants to do.
Yeah, that's a great start.
What do we all hate doing? Oh, we don't like documentation. Oh, we don't like to listen to calls. We don't like to, build their. Okay, well, let's start there. Let's see if we can create, we can use AI to help us do these things that no one wants to do so that we can do things we do want to do. What do you want to do with all the hours you save? Oh, I want to do these things. Okay, great. Let's make a list, right? And this reshaping the dialogue of, like, it's like, to your point, it's a helper, right? It's like, you can be Santa and they can be the elves in the back of the house, and you tell it what to do. And as long as you're making sure that it's current in, making the next best toy and not making everyone wooden, what are they called? Rocking horses, then it's moving you're moving in the right direction.
Well, I want to share with you briefly my wife Laura, in teaching an undergraduate class at Rider University recently, um, led a meditative exercise. She brought the undergraduate class outside. She had them all silence their phones. She asked them to maintain their silence as long as they can. And it managed to be about 3 minutes, which is as long as this group.
Practice,
Okay. Um, and in the end, she asked them two things. The first was, "What did you notice?" And several students like had this amazed expression as they talked about hearing birds. hearing wind go through tree limbs that didn't have leaves on them, sounds of cars that went by, people breathing, like things that they weren't noticing normally in life, right? But then she asked them the next question: what will you do with the time that AI gave you back on that last exercise that I know you used it on for, for that research project? Being an expert in AI, I know what to look for in the content. So I see how much time has gotten saved. Well, my question is, how are you going to use that? And it was a stupefying question. And I think it
It's
is
still on our devices, of course. We're going to be right.
that's what I think is happening more and more. And so if you want to talk about how do we harness our creativity again, AI could be giving a lot of us a magic moment in our lives to turn back time there. But will we make the right decision with that time? That's the question.
That is the question. And I'll just say that, it hasn't been very long that I've been meditating. But I've just been, it's like so addictive. People don't realize, and I meditate like 2 hours every morning and I just cannot wait to get up. Like I used to get up before and go exercise. Now I get up at 3 and I like just jump right out of bed and I'm like, all right, let's put my moosey mask on. And it's, it's, you just don't realize what potential you have, really, like that, to really love yourself and to connect with the universe, and it is transformative. So I really appreciate that she's sharing that with our youngins. I tried to get my daughter to meditate for 6 minutes and it was a challenge. I'm like, it's 6 minutes, breathe. Like, oh no, it's so hard. Fun. I guess my last question for you is, what do you think is most exciting about the future of innovation? And are you, your book is sounds amazing. I can't wait to read it. Are there any, calls to arm here? Is there ways that business leaders can help promote this change that we're looking toward?
Yeah. So I think the thing that's most exciting to me is the accessibility to innovate. There is technology has made it possible for so many more of us to go to an Amazon.com and find a bunch of little sensors that we could plug together. We don't need to know anything about the software, and we could create something that monitors our home environment or our outdoor environment in just the way we want it to, right? The excuse me, the availability to innovate is much more widely available than ever before. And that's the thing that's got me most excited, because now kids of all ages, 2 to 92, right? And beyond, every one of us have the ability to do that. As far as the AI ecosystems revolution, yeah, one of the things that I did along with the book as a companion was built an AI ecosystems readiness assessment. I realized that, there's a lot to think about there. And it's difficult to have conversations from business to policy and legal to and IT, and then to customers and partners and all of those groups and those organizations. So we need a common framework to have those conversations. So yeah, if anybody checks out the book, they can definitely find the self assessment there as well. And of course, you can always reach out to our team. We'd be happy to provide any additional context. And if nothing else, find the parodies that we've recorded along as a companion to the book. The book, as with everything in my life, has a very strong musical themes to it. Every chapter is inspired by a lyric of a different song from a different genre. And we couldn't stop there. We started recording parodies that you'll find as well too. Hope you enjoy.
Wow, I can't. Well, I love music, so I can't wait to get a copy of the book and read it and sing along.
Go, go, go.
Well, thank you so much for being here today. So to learn more about Joe, you can visit his website, joehudicka.com. You can connect with him on LinkedIn. And don't forget to pick up a copy of his book that's already an Amazon bestseller. It's just been getting ready to hit the shelves. Amazon, Barnes& and Noble, Target. And are there any other distribution points? Are you going to be at the airports yet?
Geez, I can't even keep up with it. But
Yeah.
I'll tell you, anybody checks out my LinkedIn profile will see that I've been Easter egging a few copies at select airports around the world.
Love that. That's my favorite. That's how I found you. Actually, I was watching it and I thought it was so fun. I like laughed so hard when I get to see them and you like sneak them in like all stealth. It's very covert of you.
I appreciate the connection.
Well, to all my listeners, please join me next week as I interview another industry expert and a topic in topics to help you succeed on and offline. Don't forget to subscribe on the covertcode.com to your favorite podcasts, Apple, Amazon, Spotify, iHeart, and YouTube. I'll see you next week in the Pixels. Aloha.